what's up, everybody? Welcome. Welcome to the unexpected bonus stream. Looks like I forgot to bring the chat over. Let's do that. All right, there's the chat. Hello, greetings, welcome. Yeah, I was just we didn't stream Thursday. We didn't stream last night, and I didn't have to work Thursday, basically all of Wednesday, and I did nothing the last 2 days. And today, we're still not playing our Pathfinder 2 game because we're still Aaron and Bob are off doing second Thanksgivings, and so I was pretty bored, and so I said, okay, well, I'm just going to stream. And again, I don't really have any sort of objective for this stream. I just figured, we could just all hang out. Let's see here. Yes, this is an accurate representation of the channel. Let me rephrase it. I don't want to. Growing our viewership is fine. I just want to, our message is to try to illuminate and bring more people into the conversation. And so there is a balance, right, between, and it's a tough thing to do because a lot of the things that I want to talk about and a lot of the things I want to expose people to are not things, quite frankly, it's not things that, people are going to click on unless you're already sort of in the know. And I don't want 5th edition D&D or Pathfinder 2nd edition to be a bait and switch, right? I don't want it to be a, oh, hey, like we're a Pathfinder 2 5th edition channel. Come on in. And then you get here and we're talking about Fabula Ultima, because I don't think that that's being very genuine. Obviously, I like a wide variety of games, and it's interesting for me to talk about all of them. But I think that's been sort of the core difficulty that I've been dealing with here over the last number. What the hell is going on with my hair? The last number of months here as well. Yes, it's a stream for Europe. Welcome to our European brothers and sisters. Welcome. Pillsbury's off to get a beer. Fantastic. Pumpkin is here as well. We got Self-Confessed Cynic throwing out the dumpster fire. Season's greetings to you, Jingles. Sidon, hello. Yes, it is. Nober, it is now off guard as Lolly in case Wistak say. Yes, it is a random stream. Gossamer, welcome. Yes. Yeah, I mean, again, I don't think everything that I have to say about role-playing games is correct. I very much am sure that what you have to say about role-playing games isn't necessarily correct. It's just, it's about the conversation. It's about being exposed to new ideas. Sometimes it's about being forced to defend your pre-existing biases and your pre-existing notions. And I think that is the real goal, the real gain. You guys have a Christmas stream lined up yet? Well, we've had this goal here for a holiday one shot, for a while, and it has not been doing well. So, no, we do not necessarily have a Christmas stream lined up yet. So that is the answer. I don't know. I think it really comes down to who's available and what it is exactly that we want to do. Historically, our holiday one-shots have involved bringing ourselves on and some patrons and playing that way, Foundry or whatever. But we also have the studio. We've got some people here locally, so it's kind of like a question of what's the best to do. Thank you, Asser. Appreciate it. Yes, again, we're hanging out. It's early. Why not? So, anyways. So what's going on? What are you all thinking about? What are you all talking about? What are you all want to know about? Because, my mind has been sort of, all over the place here. Thank you. Actually we are, I think, like 6 days away from the 3-year anniversary of this channel. I think our first video was published November 30th, 2020. So we're coming up on 3 years, if you can believe that, since episode 1, Burnt Offerings. Yeah, that is All Spells Remastered. I mean, I don't mind. I don't personally think that the remaster is that exciting. I think it's a little more annoying than anything else. I think they changed some things, but they didn't change enough, and that's okay. I mean, they shouldn't have changed enough. I mean, if you're sticking with the idea that it's not a new edition, then you should not make it a new edition. I think actually they changed too much. Even things that are good, I think they changed too much because it makes it very, in my opinion, not backwards compatible. And I think there's a lot of confusion that's going to be sort of rampant throughout the player base for months, if not years to come. So, it's kind of a tough situation. But, do I like talking about game design? Do I like talking about spells? Do I like talking about how things are functioning? Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we're here for. Hello, Nick. Hello, Cell. Building Leagues of Votan. Space Dwarves, indeed. Complexity versus depth, fun versus interesting, output and input randomness. I blame the GDC videos that got posted in the KOC Patreon Discord. Yeah, those are great videos. I mean, those are great, fantastics. Yeah, it is a big shrug burger for sure. Again, they're trying to do a lot of different things here. How do I award hero points? I'm giving 2 per session at the beginning. I don't feel comfortable rewarding role playing. Alvaro, I will tell you exactly how I reward hero points. Everyone gets 1 at the beginning, and then honestly, I throw them out whenever anybody does anything that makes me think, oh, that deserves a hero point. It doesn't have to be. It could be role playing. It could be something awesome. It could be. Sometimes I will award a hero like Smith is playing a sorcerer in our Abomination Vaults game. And the other day, I want to say he used somebody had made the creature flat-footed, off guard. Somebody had made the monster off guard automatically. So, right, like it wasn't just because of the flank. I think it was they critically hit with a feint or something. Or maybe they crit with a sword. I think that's what they did. A critically hit with a sword, and that put them off balance. And so the AC dropped, and Smith came in with some sort of ranged spell attack. Might have been like an acid arrow spell or something. And he cast True Strike on himself, and he rolled his 2d20s to hit the lower armor class monster, and they both missed. And I went, oh, that sucks. Here's a hero point. So I awarded a hero point for him not doing something. Again, I think just throw them out. Who cares? Just throw them out all the time. I mean, I think doing it on any sort of like, every hour I give out 1 hero point to everybody. I don't think that's fun either. Make it a reward. And, if somebody else in the play, I mean, my players, I let my players award each other hero points. I mean, some people are like, oh, that's busted, because then they can just give it to somebody who's at 0. But I don't play with lame people. Maybe you do. But frequently, someone will do something amazing, and one of my players will toss one of their hero points over to that player because I missed it. And a lot of times I'll just then take a hero point and give it back to the player who just awarded it. So because it's basically them saying like, you missed that was an opportunity. Hero points are like dog treats, and when you're trying to train a dog, you got to be quick and just say, here you go, that was good, here you go, that was click, good, here, sit down, click, here's your treat. Hero points are like that. And, experience points don't give you that kind of granularity. Hero points do. So if everybody's laughing, hero point. If something's like, oh, that sucks, hero point. If someone's like, that was awesome, hero point. I just give them out all the time for whatever it is that you want to encourage. Maybe you do not want to encourage people doing awesome things, in which case, don't award hero points. So I just throw them out all the time. In fact, another option to do, Alvaro, is put a bowl of them in the middle. I use poker chips. I know this is harder when you're playing online, but there's got to be like virtual tokens or something, or virtual chips. I put a bowl of them out in the middle of the table and just say like, hey, here are 6 of them. And if somebody does something amazing, reach into the bowl and hand somebody a hero point. And what I'll do is every hour I'll put like 2 or 3 more of them in there, and we'll just that way, everybody has access to them. Just go with the flow. If another player thinks another player did something amazing, let them award them a hero point. Who cares? I think that's amazing. So that is how I do it. Mine is extremely loosey goosey, and I'm right there with Ben. I used to give out hero points like candy. I am the same way. All these confusing 0.5 editions are a welcome excuse to actually play the other games on my shelf instead. Let me be clear about something. I don't think there's anything wrong with a game coming in and saying, we want to do a cleanup. We want to do a brand new edition. I before the remaster was saying I would be all in for a Pathfinder. I agree, it's probably too early for a 3E, but I would have been okay with them officially saying, this is Pathfinder 2.5E. We're not changing the core rule set or structure of the game, but we are doing a balance, fun, and interesting and mechanically, mechanical capability test. We're doing a pass on everything. We're going to rewrite a bunch of feats. We're going to rewrite a bunch of stuff, and the game is going to be fundamentally different. I would have been okay with that. I think, the game has been out for 4 years. You learn a lot in 4 years. So I'm okay with people iterating their work. Train your players like dogs with these 10 tips. Look, rewarding and punishing behaviors goes far beyond the realm of pets. Hello, Satir. I tried doing that, but I started feeling like my players were performing for me instead of playing for fun. So that is interesting. Are you saying that you weren't rewarding things for being fun? Because if they're performing for you, again, Alvaro, let me be very clear about this. I don't award hero points for role playing. So that's that's the number one thing. You don't have to talk in character or give some sort of emotional speech in character for me to give you a hero point. I think that's not what, number one, I don't think that is what role playing is. And number two, I don't think that is something that you should necessarily even be awarding in Pathfinder 2nd edition. So, every time I hear, people talk about oh, my players don't even flank. Guess what? If the rogue, if the monk goes around to the other side of the monster to flank it so that he can hit and the other person can hit, I go, hey, that was a great act. That was an awesome tactic. You flanked that creature. Here's a hero point. Keep it up. That's cool. That's really good. Hey, you used Bone Mow, and then the spellcaster could, land their spell that has a will DC. Great job. Here's a hero point. Hey, you remembered that the creature had a low will save or fort save, so you targeted it with a spell that uses their fort save. Here's a hero point. Great job. I think that's again, you're rewarding the behavior that you want to see. You can get into voting systems. Luke Crane and Burning Wheel and stuff like that loves his voting systems. I don't know how much I used to do it a lot because I thought it was really, but at the end of the day, I feel like voting for who gets one is a little fraught with is a little fraught. I guess is what I'm going to say. What are good ways to guide your players to build good TTRPG habits? Also, what even are good TTRPG habits? Well, as a player, I think the number one habit that people should be, that to me, that makes a good player, is someone who is being an attentive and active listener. Full stop. For me, I can handle almost anything in a role-playing game. I can handle almost anything as a player, from a player in a role-playing game. But the one thing that just kills me is when somebody is not paying attention. That infuriates me to no end. And, just like, if you were having a conversation with somebody and they started looking at their phone. I remember once I was out with a buddy of mine, and he was known for being a bit of a boor and a bit crass. And, he asked me out to dinner. We went to dinner. We're sitting there, and, we're sitting down, we order our food or drinks or whatever. We're waiting, and he pulls out his phone and he starts going through his phone. And I fucking chewed into him. I said, "You asked me here and you're just going to sit there on your phone?" I said, "I'll leave. I will happily leave right now. I have other places I could be. If you're going to come here and you're going to go through this process, then don't be on your phone." And again, I know that that's like a big social thing nowadays. It's like, don't say anything, don't upset anybody. Yeah, I don't care. I'll lose friends all the time. I don't care. Do you make accommodations for people that are neurodivergent? To a certain extent, Guitar Guy Nick, to a certain extent. What I mean to say is, I understand that everybody has different, accommodations and different needs, but I'm not willing to have a bad experience so that someone else can have a good experience. I'm not being paid. I'm doing this for free. It's supposed to be fun and enjoyable for me. If I can make certain accommodations that don't impact, that are limited impact or no impact, and all I have to do is change certain, things around, then of course I'll happy to do them. But at the same time, I don't think that I should have to sacrifice my vision of the game or what I consider to be. And that's going to be different from every game to every game, from every game master to every game master. Obviously, if you are a game master who is going, "Hey, I'm going to run this game in a public setting with a free open pass and I'm going to invite everybody to come down to my game system," you should, as a game master, be much more willing to, accept and accommodate a bunch of different things. But at that point, your goal is a little different, in my personal opinion. I think as a game master in that situation, what you are trying to do is maybe get experience running the game for a bunch of different people, and you're supposed to be, maybe you're being a bit of an evangelist. You're spreading the word of whatever game it is that you're doing. But if I'm like running a game because I want to run a game, then I'm going to set my standards to myself. And if I have to change something or do something that's going to make the game not fun for me, then I'm not going to run that game, or I'm not going to play with that player. And I'll say maybe next time or maybe never. But I'm not willing to compromise, beyond a certain point for anybody, that whether they're neurodivergent or maybe they're just an asshole. I am resting and relaxing. This is good times. Aren't you supposed to be at Thanksgiving number 3 or something? Yeah, I mean, I always tell people, the number one goal of everybody at the table, including the game master, should be, is everybody else having fun? Am I having fun? That number one, is everybody else having fun? Number 2, am I having fun? You do need to be you need to be sensitive to your own needs, and that's fine. But again, Guitar Guy Nick, I 100% understand that, and I 100% am cognizant of that. But at the same time, I got to draw a line somewhere. And if I'm not saying that they can't play role-playing games. I'm not saying that they can't do any of that. I'm just saying, past a certain point, they can't play in my game. If somebody had a kid and they're like, "Oh, I can't come unless my kid comes." Their kid comes, he's just too young, or she's just too young. She doesn't want to sit still. There's quote unquote, there's nothing wrong with her, or anything like that, right? There's no issues. She's just young. I'll say, "Hey, I'm not playing with that. I'm not playing with your daughter. I'm not playing with your son." If Bob wanted to bring his, 6-year-old or whatever to the session, I would tell him no. I have my standards. And again, everybody's different. Everybody's going to have different points. But again, I think there's a lot of game masters out there who maybe feel like their role or job as the game master is to be somebody's parent or to be somebody's you know, like you owe your players something. I don't think you owe your players shit. Let's see here. Anthony, howdy. Hello. Howdy to you as well. So yeah. Been thinking a lot. This is why I like tips. All Thanksgiving leftovers ranked. Oh, that's a great question. Let's see. I mean, I was like, do I have? Here we go. All right. All right. All right. So, number one is ham. I just feel like it reheats the best. I really like it, but I think it reheats poorly is like stuffing. I like stuffing, but I think I don't think it's as good the next day. That's just my personal belief here. I'll say number two. Well, technically it's not really a leftover, but pie is great. I mean, I love pumpkin pie. I like apple pie. Those are all great. Number three, I'll go with the mashed. Potato. It's been a while. Mashed potatoes. Boom. And then we'll just do number four. This is a bit of a wild card. I mean, generically, you have all your vegetables and all your other stuff. I'm just trying to think, like, what do I go for? Number four, I'm actually going to put the turkey. Turkey to me, I don't know. Once you stick it in the microwave, unless maybe if you heat it up or whatever, they're fine. And then I say number five is stuffing there. So that is my Thanksgiving, all Thanksgiving stuff ranked. And again, yeah, I agree that mashed potatoes are very good, which is why they're there. But I just like the other things more than mashed potatoes. But yeah, Sean's saying turkey sandwiches, man. Again, the thing is, and I, to be clear, like when I used to cook the turkey, I would brine the bird and, make some fairly juicy meat that was pretty good at protecting the leftovers. So I will say that, I'll say this. If you brine your bird, I think it reheats a lot better. If you don't brine the bird, I think it's pretty bad. I think if it was brined, maybe it shifts up a position. But anyways, that's that. Oh boy. So let's see. What else? Any other thrilling questions or things that we could talk about? This is just me randomly pontificating something I've been thinking about. I've actually been the other day, somebody was asking me questions about Legend of the Five Rings, and I really like that game, but there's certain elements of it that I really I want to improve. But and again, this isn't even a situation where it's like go play something else. It's like this is a situation where I think some parts of the game is it's a little I'll say undercooked, right? Like it. There's just some parts that didn't have enough attention to them. And I'm like, oh, I should spend a bunch of time on this. And I'm like, why? I'm like, okay, number one, we're not even actively playing our L5R campaign, right? Like our campaign has been on hiatus for like months. And then number two, so like there's no campaign. And then number two, there's no one playing this game, right? There's no view. Like even in my Discord, there's nobody playing in this game. So it's like, why do I constantly find myself drawn to the most, completely out there role-playing games of all time? I'm like, it's like without fail, whenever anything is super, super esoteric and we're not even playing it, that's the game that I always want to play. It's very annoying. Let's see. It is because of honor. I think it's because the game is so compelling. I'll be honest with you. I think it's because the game really, really is interesting to me. And the other thing that I think is really, really interesting is, we've talked a lot about this idea of randomness, right? And like of input versus output randomness. And so the idea of input randomness is the randomness comes first, then you make a decision, right? So it's like the randomness comes first, then you make a decision. And I think that's what's like really interesting to me about Legend of the Five Rings, and to a certain extent, I guess, Genesis system, is that, you roll your dice first, okay? Then you take a look and decide, okay, because in Legend of the Five Rings, you might only get to, so you rolled 6, but you get to keep 4. So it's like, which 4, am I going to keep? Am I going to keep those 4? Or am I going to keep, these 4? And some dice have good symbols on them. Some dice have bad symbols on them. And so like, but there's never a dice that's just like, oh, this only has bad symbols on it. Of course I wouldn't keep it. It's like, oh, this die has, a success symbol, but it also has a strife symbol. So like, do I want to keep that die? Because even though it'll help me succeed, it will also generate a point of strife for me. And I think, using that to sort of guide, not only that, but guide what is happening in the narrative, I think it's really, really cool. I just think that whole process is really, really interesting. So anyways, that's just something I've been thinking about. Let's see here. Sign wants to run the game again. Sweet. What PF2 party would you make to defeat Mariah Carey? So 9 to 5ers can have an ear rest. Well, if you had a 4-person party, I would say, I don't know, 2 fighters, 2 war priests. Maybe 3 fighters and a bard. 3 fighters, all with high charisma, archetype champion to get land hands and champion reaction, and then a bard or another war priest. I suppose if you have a sorcerer who is 8th level and has taken cross-blooded evolution, or they were primal and have access to heal as well, and has it as a signature spell, that I can accept as well. But by and large, if you have fighters and access to the spell heal, and maybe some way to just give yourself status buffs, there's very little in the game that can really stand against you. So just FYI. Well, that can happen. I mean, there's no doubt though, Laz, that Legend of the Five Rings, the 5th edition of Legend of the Rings, which is not 5th edition D&D, is a very different animal than the Legend of the Five Rings games that have come before it. Alvaro, did you know something about the DC-20 system? Yeah. So, I mean, without going too far into it, I'll just say this. I've seen Dungeon Coach's videos, and especially when I was first, getting on to into the content creator space, and I kind of he struck me as one of those content creators who is relatively new to the game, having joined just pretty much within what I would consider to be the new time of the game, and was out there giving all these people advice and tips, and a lot of it I was like, this to me, I'm like, oh, this is just a 4E idea. You're just telling people about it and saying, oh, look at this creative new idea that I had. But so I never really respected the guy that much. I felt like a lot of his stuff, his content was pretty derivative and pretty uninspired. But he seems to have put in the appropriate amount of work and put together a good team for this DC-20, and it seems like he blended and borrowed and incorporated the right elements from various games that I think are pretty successful and pretty cool, including Pathfinder 2nd edition and 4th edition D&D. And so, yeah, I plan on taking a look at it. I know there's an alpha version for sale, but I don't know if I want to pay for somebody else's playtest that isn't a major publisher. So I'm a little bit, difficult about that. I need a bard for counter performance. Any tips for Oracle players? Don't play one. I mean, honestly, Nober, I mean, you're a spellcasting class, so I would say take good spells. And if you don't know what spells are good, you should check out our All Spells Ranked or better yet, check out our Google spreadsheet, which you can find either through our Discord, or I think there's links to it on the last couple of the All Spells Ranked videos. Like at least the final episode for sure has a link to a Google sheet that has all the many, many, many hundreds of ranks. Just pick spells that are, rank B, rank C, or rank B, rank A, rank S, and, you'll be pretty good. Yeah, I just think that that's an interesting dynamic, Lollipop. I mean, because even as much as I like Powered by the Apocalypse, by the Apocalypse still ultimately has output randomness, right? You make a decision, and then we roll dice and to see what happens, right? There's no more decision making that occurs after the roll is made. You could argue that there's some element of that with like, if if the player has to choose between, like, for example, if you roll a 7 or 9 in Dungeon World with hack and slash, no, is that 7 or 9? Like, if the GM gives you an option or a worse choice, but it's not really anything that, you're in control of. It's like the GM making a decision for that. Question: do you think Pathfinder 2nd Edition easy mode? Okay, I'll say. Oh, do you think Pathfinder 2nd Edition easy mode, hard to kill PCs, has created an environment where PC death is frowned upon, and a GM that kills a PC, or heaven forbids, TPKs the party, is labeled a killer GM? No, I do not, Joe. I think society, modern day gaming culture, has created an environment where PC death is frowned upon, and I'm one of those people who mostly frowns upon it. I think it has an appropriate place in the right game, but I think, if you're playing the kind of heroic fantasy game that has the kind of in-depth, labor-intensive character creation process that a game like Pathfinder 2nd Edition has, I just feel like, death is particularly problematic in that system. And I mean, does this mean that players are entitled? Absolutely. It absolutely means, because they come into a game expecting that they're going to get to, have their character go from level 1 to level 20, and they're going to have everything labeled out for them, or laid out for them. And they're going to be able to, get their build online and, all that stuff. And so that is, not to go off on a rant here, but, the point of the game for them isn't to experience the game. The point of the game for them is to, actuate or bring online the concept or idea that they already had. Could be a mechanical concept, it could be a story concept, but the point of the matter is the game exists for them, not to be something to be experienced. The game that you're running is simply a means to an end by which they can progress their character. What kind of happens in between is almost just like kind of immaterial to people, I think. They just want to see their character, come online, I guess would be the way I would describe it. And of course, you could just do that at home. You could just make a level 20 character, and some people do that. But there's like a degree of authenticity and pride, I suppose, that comes with it when it happens for realsies. And so at that point, the player isn't actually interested in the game. They're interested in their character and their character's build. So I think it's really more of a function of what people want out of a TTRPG. That, and to be clear, that comes with the territory. When you make characters and classes that have all of these interesting doodads and options and little stuff all over the place, then yeah, people are going to get excited to, play with that. And so naturally people are going to say, yeah, I am excited to take, gang up and opportune backstab and preparation, because this game has all these, fun, cool widgets, and I want to get the chance to experience with them and play with them. And if you kill their PC, I've argued before, it doesn't really matter, because they could just make a new PC that's exactly the same as their old PC. But if you kill their PC, you are deriving a, you're taking that away from them. And you might say, but isn't it always been true? Yes, but if you think about like the idea that the player was just enjoying the sessions, they were just enjoying the process, they didn't really care about the destination, then if you get to the destination a little sooner than expected, they're still going to say, hey, I had a great time, because I had a great time at level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, level 6, level 7. Like, the fact that I died doesn't actually change any of my enjoyment, because I didn't have this concept or this idea built in that this game, sure, this game will be fun, but most of the fun of this game for me is going to be getting to 20 or getting to this certain key level that I have built up in my mind as being sort of the moment where I did the thing. And so when you have all these expectations foisted onto that level, that's where I think problems come in. Yeah, Pillsbury. I think that's a good, reasonable suggestion. And there are other systems that do just that. I mean, we've of course been talking endlessly on this channel about Fabula Ultima, and in Fabula Ultima, when your character goes to 0 HP, okay, there's no death or dying rules or anything like that. If you go to 0 HP, your character can either surrender or your character can sacrifice. And, because there's no tightrope here, there's no like, oh, you're in the danger zone, you're at 0 hit points and you'll die maybe in 3 to 5 rounds if no one does anything and you roll really bad and the fight lasts that long, right? The fact of the matter is, Fabula Ultima, as crazy as this may be, in my opinion, is a lot easier to, even though it's a table talk narrative game with, with bonds and your theme of anger or love, it's this super kind of foo-foo-froofy game. But I actually think it's a lot easier to quote unquote die, and rightfully so, because when you go to 0 hit points, you're donezo. But why? Because they know that they're not ruining the game by doing that. Because if this happens, it's the player who makes this choice. This is a player choice here, right? And so, do they want to surrender? And your character cannot die, will not die, but there's going to be consequences, and there's going to be things that change the game. Or their character can die, and even in doing that, at least they get to go out like a badass. So, I don't know. I mean, in terms of, there's a lot of different solutions. This one is about as simple and straightforward and easy to implement as it comes. Sidon's character literally died today in our Blaze in the Dark game. Okay, but let's be clear about something here. Unless you guys made a mistake, he should have been able to resist that if he wanted to. And so, again, I mean, it depends on, what ruling was made at the table. But in theory, a scoundrel in Blades in the Dark can always resist any consequence. And so even if your character got, level 5 harm, blown up, you should be able to resist that maybe down to, level 3 harm, where, you're badly burned or something. So again, I think that it'd be interesting to see what actually happened. And that's true. This is another example of kind of one of the things that I talk about sometimes. It's like, people will say in Pathfinder 2, they'll go, oh, well, just come back as a skeleton or a ghoul. And it's like, we're playing Quest for the Frozen Flame, or we're playing Rise of the Rune Lords, or we're playing, I don't know, any adventure ever. People just don't come back as a ghoul. It's like completely absurd. Now, in Blades in the Dark, you have a techno city, a dark punk fantasy city, where the spirits of the dead no longer leave the material world, and the city is surrounded by endless wastelands, because now that the spirits of the dead no longer pass, everything beyond the city is a hell-torn wasteland, and barriers of electricity and lightning surround the city to keep the ghosts at bay. And when a person dies inside of the city, their ghost will emerge and become a nebulous spirit unless it is captured and burnt using electroplasm. So literally, by default in Blades in the Dark, if your character dies and doesn't get their soul or body burned by ectoplasm, electroplasm, then you by default become a ghost. And guess what? In the core rulebook, there's even rules for all of this because it's literally baked into the assumption of the game. That is how you handle, it could return as a ghost. So, Pumpkin here is talking about Blades in the Dark. So, that gets my thumbs up of approval. Let's see. Do I think PF2 PCs come online too late in levels, like after level 10? Yes. I think I've said this before. I'll say it again. This includes 4th edition D&D, because people are like, Derek, you love 4th edition D&D. You never talk anything bad about it. Yes, I do, all the time. Too many role-playing games, I think, are designed around the newbie experience. And I am okay with you creating a beginner box set. Legend of the Five Rings does a good job of this. They have a beginner box set that has somewhat slimmed down rules, pre-gen characters, and a kind of a microscoped version of the game and the rules. Great for learning, great for getting online. But for me, I think that most RPGs are designed with their core rulebook product as being like, we want to design an experience so that the first time a player is ever playing this game and they sit down and they make a level 1 character, that they'll be able to handle it. We don't want to give them too much complexity. We don't want to give them too much because it could overwhelm them. And that is a fine goal. Save that shit for your beginner's product. Make the actual game the one that people are going to own for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. And that way you don't have this situation where players go, okay, well, I guess we'll start at level 3 or we'll start at level 5. Because I think there's a desire to start at low levels. But quite frankly, 4th edition, 5th edition, and Pathfinder 2, that shit's boring after you've played the game, once or twice. So, yeah. So PF2 is like for Johnny Spike players. Actually, Lolly, yes, I completely agree with that. PF2 is very good for Johnny Spikes, I think. Yeah. Hi, Boothby. Bye, Boothby. Nice. Let's see. Counterpoint, but isn't that like playing a video game with God mode on? Does that mean people don't care for the challenges? Joe, the thing here is to realize is that just because there's no death doesn't mean there aren't any consequences. This is the big thing that separates TTRPGs from a video game. Like, so for example, Joe, we're playing and you fail to defeat the villain, right? They kill you. They reduce you to 0 hit points, but you don't want your character to die. So you choose to surrender. And I say, okay, well, guess what? Your character is thrown, unceremoniously against the ground, and the villain cackles maniacally as she binds you to the ground with magical energy, and she goes, I could kill you, but I'd rather you watch the destruction of all that you hold dear. And then you are forced to watch as she enacts her plan to bring about the next phase of the demonic incursion. Or maybe you have to stay there while you watch your hometown, burn in flames. Yeah. That's a consequence. It's, in fact, a lot of people might go, oh shit, actually, you know what? I'm going to choose to die instead, because I would rather go out like a hero and a champ than watch these consequences be hoisted upon me. The other thing, Joe, not to get too down this range, but you also have to understand the point, like this idea of like, I guess, tone, or maybe, I guess another way to think of it is like how appropriate is this decision, right? If we're facing off, against a major villain, then I think anything could be on the table, right? Like, yeah, like if you fail at this, if your character goes to 0 hit points in this and you choose to surrender, again, I can't kill you. I'm not going to kill you, but I can't anyways. But like, this was a big moment in our story. And as a result, the consequences might be fairly severe, having lasting impact for the entire campaign. On the other hand of the things, if this is just some like random monster or, something silly or stupid that like just maybe something got really lucky or something got absurd, right? The dice just got really crazy and silly. And now you go to 0 hit points. And, again, actually in Fabula Ultima, you're not even allowed to sacrifice if it's just something silly and stupid and minor. Well, in that case, no, I'm not going to be like, all right, well, you're walking down the hallway and then, some rocks fall off the mountain and, you're crushed to death. Okay, well, you surrendered. Okay, well, we'll say this. The rocks miss you, or knock you out, but not before you see that the avalanche has triggered the entire collapse of the mountain and your entire village is wiped out. Like, no, I'm not going to do that, right? Like, the consequence there is going to be much more minor than it is going to be for this. It might be like, oh, you wake up, when you regain consciousness, it is almost nightfall, and you have lost whatever advantage you had, and the ritual that you were coming to stop is now probably mere moments away, right? I've escalated the situation. There were consequences. These do matter, but I didn't also destroy everything that you hold love just because you randomly got bonked on the head for a lot of damage. Valor says the MCDM RPG is supposed to be tactical and cinematic for me. They are almost opposite context. I prefer something in the middle. What do you think about it? We actually have an entire meme, Alvaro, on our Discord called Tactical Cinematic. Someone have to remind Tactical Cinematic Maneuvering. I agree that tactical and cinematic might seem like they are opposite concepts, but I think that there is a way to do it. Let's see. Again, I think you have to understand that death is a carrot. I'm sorry. Death is a stick, right? It is a way to punish a certain action or series of actions in order to encourage others. And whatever death mechanic you have is saying a lot about what kind of actions and what kind of things that you want to have happen in your game. Full stop. And if you have death being an easy thing that can happen, then one of the things that you're telling your players is this is not a game for, heroics. This is a game to be a bit more cautious. This is a game to be a bit more concerned and a little bit more, guileful than it is to be someone who, just goes in swinging. Because if you do that, there will be consequences, and those consequences could be severe, and you might get yourself killed. Joe says there's no consequences in APs. Yeah, I mean, that is true. Someone actually had I was expecting it to get downvoted into oblivion, but somebody posted a really scathing review of the Gatewalkers AP on Reddit the other day, on the Pathfinder 2 subreddit. And I expected this thing to be downvoted into oblivion, but actually it wasn't. And there were a lot of people who chimed in and said, you know what? Yeah, like this is a real problem. And these things are not that good. And, that a lot of these APs have a lot of these problems. Let's see. Wait, so Blaze in the Dark was secretly Ghostbusters the whole time? I mean, there's elements of it that are very Ghostbuster-like, Karama, but ghosts are very important. Spirits are very important to the Blades in the Dark world. So Andrew says, why do some think APs are bad? All right, let me see here. Let me see if I can bring this up, because I thought they made a really great point, or they made a really great series of points, and I don't want to misquote them. Let's see if I can find it, or if it's already been bundle. Okay, thank you. Advertising. Well, let's see here. Man, it's maybe it's already been downvoted into oblivion. Let's see. What's the name of that AP? Is it Gatewalker? I don't remember. Damn. Maybe it got deleted. The mods on the Pathfinder 2 subreddit can be pretty quick on that. Trying to think here. Man, I wish I knew. Oh, here we go. Found it. Hey, okay, they did not delete it. It's 272 upvotes. So just so that we're all kind of working in the same space here. So this was what the post on Reddit said. So let's see specifically what they said, or what they had issues with, I should say, rather. All right. So their first complaint is that the AP was not an investigation. So apparently this AP was kind of sold, and certainly the first adventure tried to sell it as an adventure. And again, I'm not super familiar with the Gatewalkers. It was not an investigation, but it was sold as being a sort of a paranormal investigative story. But they said it ended up being more like an Indiana Jones style world hopping adventure where the characters fight aliens and explore strange realms. It is not an investigative focused AP. It is a grand adventure with just a couple of spooky events and elements. And then they even go on to say that there are only a handful of investigation subsystems strewn throughout all three of the adventures, and only one of these was actually relevant to the plot. Everything else is just told to you by NPCs with no investigation into the actual storyline. They also talked about how there's just so much going on that is unrelated to the main plot. They talked about how there's all this background for characters, which is thrown into the middle of their stat block while you're trying to run them. And it's really hard to integrate them. And then the last thing that they said is, I actually have one more big general complaint with Paizo APs. The fights kind of blow. I don't think a single fight in this adventure took place in an exciting location or interesting terrain. As such, there were no enemies that took advantage of any unique terrain. The enemies themselves were all right, but there was nothing very interesting mechanically either. The most interesting it got was enemies with pre-existing spells. I feel like Paizo should have a gameplay director while working at Adventure Pass to make sure that it has fun and unique combats. And again, I expected this to get completely downvoted into oblivion, but a lot of people, chimed in and were just like, yeah, like I definitely, I definitely feel that. And so this person says that, yeah, this is in a nutshell why Gatewalkers was the first AP I ever quit as a player. So, I mean, again, is that like is this like a complete? Am I completely shitting on this like entirely? No, but there are legitimate reasons why people don't like these adventure paths as well. It feels like AP writers just slap stats on a story and draw flat maps where everyone ends in a flank diagonal. Yeah, we call this the conga line in Pathfinder 2, where you'll have a PC and then the monster, and so then another PC comes over and they flank the monster, but then the next monster goes, so they flank the PC, right? And then the third PC goes, but he wants to flank, so he could potentially move here, but a lot of times he'll move here, and then you end up with this kind of like, we call this the conga line, or the conga line of death. And so it does happen a lot. And it's just, and this play pattern is just optimal. I mean, you want to make your enemies off guard through flanking. Yeah. I don't know. It's hard. I've never been part of that process. I can't say that I imagine that, yes, there are too many cooks in the kitchen. I own Battle Zoo's Jewel of the Indigo Isle, and I have not read through all of it yet. It is very detailed, so it's hard for me to say. But I will say this. Pumpkin is right. The folks over at Roll for Combat go, look, this is a railroad. We think it's a great railroad. We think it's a fun railroad, but they are very upfront about it. So at least they're being honest, and maybe that gives them the strength, of design to be able to deliver. So yeah. But yeah, I've really just got this like list of just so many role-playing games that I want to play right now that I just don't. I mean, again, we're playing Pathfinder 2, but the goal is we're playing Abomination Vaults, and between me, you, and everybody else here on the internet, we're trying to wrap that up. The PCs are almost 10th level. They want to go down to the final level and take out Belcora and wrap that up. And the truth is that for Bob and I, and certainly for Aaron, we've been playing Pathfinder 2 for the last 4 years. We've been talking about Pathfinder 2 a ton, and rightfully so. It's a big game, and it's been very instrumental to our channel. And so, I think these are all really, really good things. But the fact of the matter is, the remaster, it didn't reinvent the game or anything like that. So, we're just we're looking really, forward to trying to do something else, but there are so many other games that I want to play. I want to play Forbidden Lands. Bob bought the Forbidden Lands box set, which is wild. Part of it is I have not played a Year Zero engine game yet. So I really want to play Forbidden Lands. I want that kind of, that kind of survival, that survival-esque gameplay, but with a modern twist. I like that Forbidden Lands. I mean, yes, you can get survival-esque gameplay by playing old school D&D as well, but I like that this has modern elements to it that maybe make it a little bit smoother to run, and not be quite so gritty and simulationist. I like that it isn't as granular maybe as some other survivalist games. And again, I kind of want that fun sandbox experience. So there is, and again, Sean, I think makes a great point. This is probably my number one concern about this game. There's just a lot of dice that are being rolled in a pool. And again, whenever I see a game that rolls a lot of dice, my thought process is always like, okay, but do you roll dice all the time? And if the answer is, if you're rolling a lot of dice all the time and it's a lot of dice that you're being rolled, then that is something that becomes kind of a problem. Again, I still think that they still think I've barely touched the surface of this game. Legend of the Five Rings for me is such a compelling and interesting world. But again, I really do think the system is just incredibly, incredibly interesting. A little underbaked, but I think it's really, really cool. And again, just seeing how a game like this can even take a player like Bob and get them, invested in their character, in the story, in the campaign. And it's not because it's interesting. It is, I suppose, but because the actual mechanics of the game, make it that way. I think that is just really, really interesting and compelling to play. Of course, Fabula Ultima. I love old school Final Fantasy games, and there's so much to like about Fabula Ultima in that, it's being inspired by classic games that I love, like Blaze in the Dark and Powered by the Apocalypse. And, there's even elements of the Fabula Ultima system that remind me of 2D20 or Legend of the Five Rings, like with the approaches and all that other stuff. What else do I want to play? I want to play 2D20 Dune, because I love Dune. And I bought all the books for the for this RPG system that have come out. Let's see. I've got the role-playing game, Masters of Dune, the great game, Power and Pawns, Sand and Dust, Agents of Dune, and yeah, and I've got the GM screen. So I think I bought all of that stuff. I love Dune. I like the kind of politics of it, and I think it's a really, really interesting world. So obviously, I really want to play that. And my experience with 2D20, it's like I played a little Star Trek Adventures. I played a little bit of the Dreams and Machines at Gen Con, but that wasn't really, in my opinion, even 2D20. I read and tried to like really dig deep into the Conan, and it didn't grip me incredibly tight in any of these instances. So I want to see if like if Dune can't do it, then nothing can. Let's see. Ryan bought the Atreides Deluxe Edition. Yeah, they have some really nice books. They have the Harkonnen book, and I think there's an Imperial book. Open World says, "This is my first time catching a stream live. Most other streams I watch via VOD while in bed trying to sleep." Well, hey, we're here. We're a little early. We're not going to be up, on too much longer. I just wanted to, come on and just hang out with everybody and kind of shoot the shit. So I just wish there was a Final Fantasy Tactics TTRPG from Lugs. There's a back burner FF Tactics, right? Oh, interesting. Yeah, there's also, yes, this old, looked like it was made on Angel Fire PDF type game called Final Fantasy RPG that is out there for free. What's 2D20 like? So the way 2D20 works is you have one set of stats in column A and one set of stats in column B. And this varies from 2D20 game to 2D20 game. The A might be something like, your skill. Is it combat? Is it diplomacy? Is it, treachery? Like what is it that you're doing? And in column B is usually something more esoteric. Like what is guiding in the Dune game? It's like, well, what is the principle or what is guiding you right now? And is it, faith? Is it duty? Is it power? Is it, I'm trying to remember what they are, loyalty. All right. So all of these have a number. Like your character's diplomacy might be 5 and their power might be 9. Okay. So they have a pretty high power ranking. So when you go to make a check in the game. Oh, well, thank you, Ryan, for that. Appreciate it. Thank you for the Swiss francs. Appreciate it. So if my character was making a check, and what I'm trying to do is I am trying to convince, the Imperial adjutant that my house has a greater claim on this city than my enemies. And I'm doing this because if I can secure this, it will mean that we will have effective control over this planet. It could be argued that I am doing this for power. I'm using diplomacy. And so you just add these two numbers together. We get a 14. And then you roll 2d20. And what you're trying to do is get that number or less on one of the 2d20s, or potentially, or even specifically both of them. And if you get none that are lower than the value, that is sort of like, failure. If you get 1, you might get kind of what we would call a partial success. And if you get both, it's kind of like you get the full success, is kind of the way that I would describe it. That's not exactly a full mapping, but for all intents and purposes, that is pretty much how the game works. Agents of Dune is on sale. I really want to run it, but none of my friends are into Dune. Yeah, that's tough. I think, for games like Dune, it's just like games like Legend of the Five Rings. I really think you need to have players that are bought in to this idea. Like if you try to play Fabula Ultima with people who have no interest in JRPGs, who have never played Final Fantasy, who've never played, Dragon Quest, who've never, that aren't into anime or, you know, if they don't have any of this, you know, does that mean that they shouldn't be allowed to play or they can't play? Of course not. But so much of the game's charms are wasted. And I'm not trying to say that someone needs to be like an expert on, you know, Frank Herbert's Dune and have read the books 18 times. Although I would seriously think that if someone wanted to, at the very least, if you want to play Dune with me, it's like at least have seen the Denis Villeneuve movie, ideally part 1 and part 2 once it comes out, or read the first book. I think that is at least a minimum primer for playing. And if you don't enjoy that, then you won't enjoy the game. So, yeah, you know how it goes. Oh, Marvelous Mr. Mean likes 2D20 a lot. Sweet. Yeah. They've created a ton of games. It's insane. Tea stirring little. That is the question to end all questions. The truth of the matter is, I feel really badly for people who are new to GMing because I think that the system has failed you. I do not think that there are no longer mainstream routes available, nor do the games, I feel, prepare you, equip you, or even encourage you to really do your own thing. And as a result, there's a certain aspect of it where you are sort of forced into feeling like you're forced to run into, you know, an adventure path. And sadly, all that does is propagate the cycle because now the players have these expectations and this is the only kind of gaming that they've ever known. And I do think it is really, really tough. It would be my answer. And I, quite frankly, too, some of these games now are so complicated, despite they try to seem like they're simple. They're not. 5th edition, Pathfinder 2nd edition. These are complex games with a lot of moving parts, and GMs are right to be like very frightened of getting it wrong and not knowing what to do and messing up some rule and ruining some experience. It's a lot to handle. And so it can be really, really intimidating, maybe purposefully so. I don't know. And so I can't really answer that one way or the other than to say it's tough out there. Yes. Yeah, Sean, that's pretty much what it is. Yeah. Dune and Doctor Who are a tough sale in my neck of the woods. Yeah. I mean, everybody has those games that they're just like, oh, that looks so cool. That looks so cool. And you're like, your players are like, come on. Like, you know, because especially when it starts leaning more into the trope of that particular thing. Like, I don't like Doctor Who. I bounced off of it hard. Like, I tried to watch it like once or twice with various doctors, and I just didn't like it. I just thought it was kind of silly. Like everybody else in existence, the only thing I've ever seen that I really liked is that clip from the one that has Karen Gillan, and they bring Vincent van Gogh to the future to show him how much everybody loves his work. And of course, that's an incredible piece of television. But I mean, that just sort of stands out, you know, uniquely in its own way. Ryan says David Lynch's Dune is better. I don't think I have it on my soundboard, but I used to have on my soundboard someone going Jasha. Yeah, the internal monologues, that's what they were, which are very prominent in the book, and Lynch put them into his movie. But yeah, weirding modules and all that stuff. I mean, I love I'm an unapologetic fan of the Lynch version.
Sin tipped $15. Let's get closer to the holiday special while prepping some FU.
Thank you, Sidon. Very nice of you to throw some money my way. Appreciate you. That is very generous of you. Yeah, again, I think we're going to have kind of a loosey-goosey schedule here over the next month or so. Hopefully, you know, I'm going to be mostly done with work. Smith is going to mostly be done with work, and you know, Bob, who knows? And so hopefully we'll just be able to get together, have fun, people are going to start Kaz is moving back, and Tim is moving back over to our side of town. So, we're hoping to get some more of our old friends onto the show, and just get some good gaming times going, good vibes going. So that's kind of my goal. So, but I appreciate it. How many dice in a dice pool becomes too many, in my opinion? Like my guess is I want a dice pool to be like at least 3. 5 is probably the ideal number, and I think 8 is fine. I think once you get past 8, like especially like 10 for me is definitely too many. 10 for me is way too many. And like, or it's like, that is the very bleeding edge of how many dice you could ever roll. And interestingly, Legend of the Five Rings, the max you could ever have is 5 ring dice, the black ring dice, and you could have 5 of the white skill dice. So the most, if you were completely double max, which would be very hard to do, it would be 10. And so that would be sort of like the limit of your experience. Oh, we're going to play Call of Cthulhu. It was never a question of if. It's just a question of like how and when. None of us know Call of Cthulhu. So like that's a lot harder for us to get, to the table. But like I said, the winter's coming, and maybe we can do a live game up at the studio with, some of our friends, and do kind of like an Arctic, kind of like a thing, the thing type game, like Arctic madness or something like that, and that could be a lot of fun. So Leog says, for sure, APs for me are the way to start, or a simple module. You can learn how to customize, and Leog, that is ideally what would happen. But I feel like nowadays the training wheels are so, the bikes are more complicated. The training wheels are more needed, and you get people who are just never learn how to ride the bike on their own. And that's just because there's too many knobs and dials and whistles. It's really, really tough. I think it really is tough. My heart goes out to anybody who's new to the hobby, and trying to do their own thing. Well, Lugs, I mean, there's a difference between a lazy DM and a DM who doesn't care about their game. I mean, I know plenty of games that are horrible, and they're horrible because the GM spent way too much time on the game. In fact, sometimes when I hear that someone's like, "Oh, I spent 20 hours preparing for the game," that's a red flag for me, because that to me is a GM who might have like this very well defined preconceived notion of what is and what isn't going to happen in the session. So, there's a caveat to that, beyond just saying that lazy GM equals bad GM. So I don't know that I would agree with that. I agree with this though. Lynch's and Denis movies are both great. They're different. Obviously David Lynch's has a lot more. It's from the 80s. Let's call it what it is. But it's also got a lot more. There's some things about it that I think are more truthful to the book. More of it is not truthful to the book, but it has a unique take on the whole situation, and I think it's really, really interesting. So again, I also think that I also agree that I like David Lynch's, 3-lobed sandworms more than I like the big tube sandworms of Denis Villeneuve. So I do agree with that. I love David Lynch's sandworms. They just feel bigger, and they just feel more massive. And rightfully so. Let's see here. Voin says, I went from 100% homebrew to using the APs to save time. Running 4 parallel groups using Foundry VTT for combat is draining all my energy after work and family. Yeah, that's a lot of games to run, period. I actually don't know, Voin. I for me personally, running an AP is not a mental saving of effort and energy. I feel like it takes me more information and more processing and more time, because I just have to like constantly be rereading and refreshing myself on what is going on and who this person is. And for me, it's a lot more work. And same thing with Foundry, between all the macros and updates and modules and maps and resizing the maps and getting all this. It's like, it actually really makes the game difficult for me to run. What is up, Chris? Open World says, what do you think about PBTA games? Love them. I don't know. I probably own 50 Powered by the Apocalypse games. I have them all over the place. I think it's a fantastic philosophy. I think it's a great system. I think there's a lot to really, really like. It's not perfect, and it doesn't work all the time. It doesn't, and I think it is demanding on a GM's creativity. It can be really, if played, especially if played improperly, it could be really, really demanding on a GM. But in a weird, like in an ad hoc way, like it doesn't require much prep. But as a GM, you have to be comfortable being flexible. You have to be adaptable. Actually, nerd alert here. Okay, in Legend of the Five Rings, you have the 5 elements, the 5 rings. Okay, so you have the Earth Ring, and the Earth Ring is all about logic and memory and procedure, right? It's all about these very solid stuff, very solid approaches and methodologies. And the Water Ring is about being adaptable and being fluid like, and being in sort of a flow state, not basically being able to shift and adapt to the the situations surrounding you. In some ways, I feel like a game like 4E D&D or Pathfinder 2 is a very Earth Ring approach. Whereas I feel like a game like Powered by the Apocalypse or even Fabula Ultima, I think is more of like a Water Ring based approach. Because I think you have to be very adaptable. I think you have to be willing to go where the flow is going. And if you try to fight against that, it's a losing battle. The way to, what's the ancient one tell Doctor Strange, you don't beat a river by trying to stop it or whatever. I can't remember what she says, but you have to go with the flow. What does Jameis say? A process cannot be stopped by a process cannot be understood by stopping it. You must go with the flow of the process, right? You have to become part of it. Like those could be very tricky, difficult things to understand. And as a result, I think that while I think it can be easier, it is by no means easy. It still requires a tremendous amount of skill and awareness to be able to do that. I somewhat agree. Oh my God, you agree. Wow. I somewhat agree with, but okay. It says somewhat. I somewhat agree with the thesis of the old How to Make a Dungeon series, RIP. Starting with a dungeon might be the coolest thing for a newbie. And yes, I agree. I mean, that is one of the reasons why I had Bob try to start with a dungeon. It'd be interesting to go back to that series now with Bob and see how much he's learned. It's been probably 2 years or so since we made those videos. But yeah, it would be interesting to say. But yes, the classic dungeon is a beginner friendly thing for a reason. And I've talked about this a million times, but the long and the short of it is the best part about a dungeon is, if I make a dungeon that looks something like, this, and, you go to this, you go into this dungeon and I make these rooms, I am not, I'm not controlling where you can and can't go. I'm not saying that you can't, I'm not trying to control the process. There's no well-defined goal. But at the same time, you can't go to this room that's right here because that room doesn't exist. You can't go to this room over here because that room doesn't exist. Dungeons are like freedom, but a confined form of freedom. And in that way, it's kind of like a training wheel, right? Where it's like, oh, hey, I can go wherever I want, but there's these, it's like a little kid bowling on the bowling alley, but you've got the bumpers up, right? They still have to bowl. They still have to get the ball down there. They're still trying to knock the pins over. You just put up, the bumpers so that they don't waste their time. Yes, we know you have fully embraced the way of water, Pumpkin. We know this. KLC, we're running Rise of the Rune Lords. Are you planning to revisit 7 Dooms for Sandpoint in some capacity? Abel, what is 7 Dooms for Sandpoint? I do not know what 7 Dooms for Sandpoint is. Maybe you could tell me. All right, I am going to be a heretic here because it is my understanding that the correct way that Herbert said to pronounce Harkonnen is Harkonnen. But I prefer to say Harkonnen. It's just how I grew up saying it because of the movie. And to me, Harkonnen, and I'll be honest with you, specifically because there is one line where at the end, Paul has won Arrakis. He's in the Imperial throne room with the Shaddam IV, and Fade Rotha is there. And, he says, Paul says, there is a Harkonnen amongst you. And, Fade says, like, the Emperor says, if Fade wishes, he can meet you in battle with my dagger. And he goes, I wish it. And then Gurney Halleck, played by Patrick Stewart, goes, this is a Harkonnen animal. Let me, please, my lord. And and he puts him aside and he says, the Emperor's blade. And then, the Fremen start banging drums and they have the cool knife fight. Anyways, but it's Patrick Stewart saying, you are a Harkonnen. This is a Harkonnen animal. Him saying this is a Harkonnen animal doesn't sound as cool. So anyways, I can only run one, max 2 games concurrently, I swear. I kind of feel the same, when we're on the channel and I have like a Friday night game that we play for our, not for the viewers. And then we have we had our Tuesday game for the viewers. That is it. That is me pretty much maxed out. I don't think I could ever really run like 3 games. I think that would be too tough for me. What up, Jekyll? Cheers. Ouija board, which is still a fantastic name, says, but if a company builds a system that works as a supportive GM toolkit, how will they sell you 5 APs and expansions per year? The poor C-suite execs would be starved. Yes, I mean, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, teach a man to fish and you feed him for the rest of his life. So, where's the money in that? Yeah, that's very true. Let's see here. Since I know that you're a 4th edition fan, what do you usually say to people when they use the old copy-paste critique that it's just a video board game, it's all combat related, and all classes play the same? I mean, the long and the short of it is all D20 games are combat related, but 4th edition actually had more things, mechanical things in the system, in the form of rituals, in the form of skill challenges, and in the form of utility powers that actually means that there are more non-combat mechanical things in the game than there ever was in any previous edition of the game. So in that respect, 4th edition supports non-combat encounters better than any other ones. And in the sense that all the classes play the same, my question to that is, they all play very differently. Do you mean that they all gain their resources at the same rate? And one could argue that is a problem if you want to have that problem. But granted, you look at most D20 games, people get their spells at the same rate. People, increase their proficiencies at the same rate. Every time you level, you gain a hit die. So all D20 games have a pretty standard boilerplate template of what they get. 4th edition is just, following that thing. I think we're just so used to, fighters and wizards operating on entirely different resource tracks that once they're all put onto one, it could be a little disconcerting. And some people feel like, things need to be different in order for them to be interesting. And I actually think there's from a game balance perspective, it is a lot easier when all of your character classes are using the same resource mechanics, because resource mechanics are pacing mechanics. And so if you have one character class that can go all day, and you have another character class that is really, really powerful, but is only designed to fight for a couple of encounters, you already are going to have a fundamental problem with the tension in your game, because you introduce the problem of the 15-minute workday. You introduce the problem of what happens if my really powerful character runs out of things to do and now is bored and has to sit around. Like, all of those things are fine on paper, but when you actually sit at a game table and play it, it could be really, really, really off-putting. So part of what they were trying to do there is a deliberate attempt to make it so that everybody is operating on the same wavelength. And that way, as a party, you can make decisions instead of having to be like, hey, I'm good, you're good, but the wizard's out of spells, so we need to go back to town. So that's my thought process there. Categorize all TTRPGs using Legend of the Five Rings. Let's see here. Well, okay, let's see. Let's see. Air, right, is all about deceit, observation, cunning. So what's a game where you have to lie a lot and, you have to, so this, I'm kidding. This is 5th edition because you have to fudge all the time. I should include Pathfinder 2nd edition in there as well, but I honestly probably not. I mean, if you're running Pathfinder 2nd edition as the book says, and you're running moderates and severes, you should almost never, ever, ever have to actually fudge. But anyways, yes, that was me being a joke. I'm not actually going to categorize all TTRPGs. I don't think it's a coincidence that the 5e beginner adventure is pretty much just a dungeon. Yeah, I don't think so either. I mean, also it's called, Dungeons and Dragons. So I guess Pathfinder doesn't have that going for it, because it can't just say, oh, well, our game is called Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, no, Burr, I completely agree. Of course I have to Jaquay the dungeon. Actually, I've recently learned from the book that I'm reading by Justin Alexander that apparently Janelle Jaquay would never wanted it to be called that, and actually prefers the term Xandering. And so it's now called Xandering the dungeon. Is what the person who, in theory, created the technique would prefer that it be called. And it's just because I think, she never viewed it as her doing anything special. It was actually the Alexandrian that sort of, formulated that process. So yeah, it's called Xandering. Let's see here. Skill challenges have and always will suck. Yes. Skill challenges are, yes. Pathfinder 2 doesn't do them well. 4th edition doesn't do them well. Skills suck in D20 games, and we're not going to get into it today, but man, I don't know how you solve that. To me, there is nothing enjoyable or interesting about making a skill check in D20. It's the reason I don't like playing rogues, because especially in the older editions of the game, so much of their power, now they're like, hey, they get all these skills and they're also combat gods. But in older games, it was like, oh, the thief gets the skills, the rogue gets the skills, but that's kind of their shtick. And I just think those things are boring. I don't think they have a lot of play. I don't think they have a lot of counterplay. And I just think that skill checks in that regard are boring. D20 skill checks in particular. Darkest Dungeon 1 would seem to be a great source of inspiration for dungeon creation. An overworld dungeon map separate to the battle maps. What do you think? Dan, I'm not quite sure I know what you mean. I mean, if we're talking about the video game Darkest Dungeon, I mean, you are describing, Dan, what fundamentally, I mean, this was the classic structure. I mean, for me, this was always what I would typically do whenever I would create a new campaign, right? You'd have the starting town where the PCs began their adventure. And then right outside of town, right, there would be a dungeon. Okay. So this is dungeon 1. And this would be like a level 1 dungeon, right? Pretty simple, pretty easy, generic monsters, pretty easy treasure, pretty normal treasure. Then somewhat nearby, maybe there's a forest nearby, right, to the town. And inside this forest, right, you have another dungeon. And maybe this dungeon is level 2 or 3. And let's just say this dungeon is mostly undead. And the treasure is a little bit better. Okay. And usually I will put a third dungeon, one way, maybe a little bit further away. That requires a sizable journey. Maybe this is like, 3 to 5 days. So just running back to town isn't like as easy. And maybe this is like a level 3 dungeon, right? And the treasure is really good. And then I basically say, okay, what do you guys want to do? You have 3 options. Obviously for the first, couple of sessions, I expect for you to go to this dungeon and, gain some levels. But when the party hits level 2, that doesn't mean that they're done with this dungeon. Far from it. They may have only explored, 30% of it. They could keep going back to that easy dungeon. Now, will they gain as much treasure and experience? No, but they're also not taking on as much risk. They could also decide, hey, we know that there's a undead-filled dungeon over here, so maybe that'll inform some of the choices that we make. Maybe it'll inform some of the magical items that we acquire. And then it feels like if we do that, we could come over to this dungeon and kick its ass. Or maybe we decide, you know what? No one made a cleric, no one made a champion, no one made a paladin. So we're not going to do that. We're going to keep going to this dungeon. And then you get to level 3 and you're like, you know what? We're almost done with this dungeon, but we're kind of getting bored with it. You know what? Let's head over to this one and try it out. Or someone may say, no, let's stick with this one. Let's completely clear this dungeon out. Let's suck everything we can get out of it. And guess what? The last couple of sessions of this dungeon will probably be your players going into hardcore hero mode, right? As they maybe, hit level 3 and everything in this dungeon is still fairly simple and easy. And the rewards won't be that great. They won't get that much experience. They won't get that much treasure, but they'll also have that kind of moment. And just when it starts to get a little boring and tiresome, by the way, this whole process took potentially months, not of campaign time, of real time, right? This could have taken 4 to 6 sessions. So that gave you time to create another dungeon down here. And this one is level 4, right? And so you just keeping the players have 2, 3, or 4 options at all time. And you just, expand out from there. That's like how campaigns were run in D&D for, the better part of, 20 years before somebody came along and said, it would be really cool if people, followed a plot. And then after Tracy Hickman did that with Dragonlance, the world was never the same. What I hear about Legend of the Five Rings make it sound like its core systems do what skill challenges wish they could do. Yes, I mean, that's part of the reason why I like Legend of the Five Rings so much, because you are absolutely right. It makes making the check interesting. It makes making the check compelling, right? That's what I think is really, really cool. Rui, nice to see you as well. Have fun catching up. Can you give us an in-depth example of how to run a good skill challenge? No such thing, Beowulf. Stop giving him trick questions. It is true. It's tough. The only skill challenges that I ever made that I considered to be particularly interesting were very complicated. And there was a lot of, and again, that doesn't mean that they're fun, right? Because it's a brute force brute force tactic, and I will completely be that. I will completely be transparent here and say that Smith and Derek are both guilty of this, where you have this fun axis, and then you have this interesting axis, and ideally, right, you want to be here. But you have a game, maybe it's here, and it's tough to decide, how do I make a game more fun? That's actually really tough. And a lot of times, you hope that the game will become more fun by increasing how interesting or how deep the gameplay goes, right? And your hope is that it won't just be a literal, shift to the right, but rather maybe, something like this. This would be ideal. But usually you end up with something more like this. The problem there is you pay for this. You pay for this by increasing the complexity of your game. And that is something, again, that Smith and Derek are both guilty of, where we will create rules to increase the depth and the interest of the game in the hope of increasing the fun. But the price is that we really jack up the complexity of the game. And unfortunately, as well, this increasing the complexity is not one-to-one with increasing the depth or increasing the interest. A lot of times you have to really crank up the complexity just to even get a somewhat of an increase in the interest or depth of a game. And as we know from Mark Rosewater, interesting is not the same thing as fun. There is no there's not a direct correlation between these two. And so sometimes you might make your game deeper and you might make your game more interesting at the cost of a fair amount of complexity, but you have done little to nothing to actually make the experience more fun. And in that case, I kind of say that you have kind of maybe failed because by and large, games are supposed to be fun. So that is where I think I get into trouble. I think a lot of people get into trouble, right? Skill challenges are pretty much just a Blades in the Dark opposed clock with skill checks. Yeah, more or less. And it would be like if I ran a clock in Blades in the Dark by being like, okay, I put a clock out and then it's got 6 segments. And it's like, okay, Sean, what are you doing? You're like, I'm going to try to learn about the enemy gang by sneaking around and observing them. Okay, cool. Sean, make a prowl check. And you make a prowl check. And I'm like, fill in 2 segments. And then I go, okay, self-confessed cynic, Vin, what are you doing? You're like, I'm going to intimidate some of the gang members on the street and get information about where this secret meeting is happening. I'm like, okay, great. Make a command check or make an intimidate check. And then he's like, okay, I succeeded. And we just keep doing that until the clock is full. Are things happening? Like, are we trying to connect narrative to mechanics? Yes. But are we doing anything interesting or fun mechanically? Not really. I don't think so. At least I don't think so. Ryan says, I love Scorpion, and thus I put a lot of points into the Ring of Air. Yeah, actually, it was interesting. I was trying to, I'm not saying I'm obsessed with needless symmetry, because it is problematic, but a little while ago, I was like, okay, so you've got air, which opposes earth, and then you have fire, which opposes water. And in the center, you have the void. And I was trying to find pairs and combinations to decide which clans would they be. So, like, for example, fire and earth, right, is very, you're steeped in tradition, you're steeped in the ways of the past, but you have a burning, fiery passion to assert yourself. And that, to me, if I think fire plus water, that to me screams lion, right? Then if I think fire plus air, I think of, a group of people who have a plan, who are, constantly trying to change and shape the future, but they are not above being subtle and deceitful and kind of indirect to do so. And that to me is, of course, Scorpion. Scorpion. Then you have air and water. And air and water is, again, someone who is very indirect, but is also exceedingly accommodating, willing to, negotiate, willing to sort of go with the flow, but at the same time, doing so with an air of deceitfulness. That to me is pure Crane. And then lastly, you have water plus earth, which is these are a flexible, dependable, physical, like a rock, literally of the four elements here, fire and air are both sort of ephemeral, right? There's no solid substance to those. Earth and water both have weight and measure. This is a people who are very solid and dependable, but are also willing to be flexible and adaptable because they need to. And so that is the Crane. And then I was like, okay, so then combine those with the void element. So you have air plus void, water plus void, fire plus void, earth plus void. And then I was trying to figure out, do these make sense for any of the other clans? And I was like, maybe the dragon, maybe the phoenix, because those are both very spiritual. But then it didn't work for the unicorn. And I got really upset because I was like, I don't really particularly see the unicorn as being very void-like. If I had to, I would say that they are water and void. But, and I would say that the Shugenja or the phoenix are earth and fire and void dragon. And I don't know who these are. Maybe those are the imperial families. I don't know. Anyways, this is the type of stuff that I just sit there and write. I did. Yeah. Crap. There we go. I did mean crap. Thank you. What do I think of Justin's book? Not finished with it yet, Edward, but I think it's good. Someone said, is he too wordy? And I don't know yet. Now that they said that, I'm reading towards that end, but I've not finished yet. It is, but it is aimed at beginners, which is a good thing. It's, do you want to be a game master? I think it is a really strong book for that. And I would pretty much recommend anybody who is interested in getting into game mastering, pick it up. That is without finishing the book yet, but I think I can safely say that it is good for that. Voin, I'm sorry if I missed you dropping out, but thank you so much. Let's see here. Yeah, that's true. There is almost no movement in that stuff. No, Rui, I think that the thaumaturge and kineticist are more of them just exploring the game system, and they're starting to understand what works and what doesn't work, I don't think it's necessarily a hint of anything to come from Pathfinder 3. No. Ouija board, for skills to be interesting, they need to be more options for skill interaction, which means more complexity in the skill system. And I'm not sure if they want that for D20 games. And you know what, Ouija board? I agree with you. You know why? D&D and Pathfinder are about combat. They are about combat. Since definitely like 3rd edition, okay? But 3rd edition, 4th edition, 5th edition, and Pathfinder 1, Pathfinder 2. These are games about combat. They want skills to be simple, short, quick, uninteresting, small things in the background. They don't need to take up a lot of space and time. Make a check, one check. We're done. Good. Moving on. Get to the next fight. Get to the next combat. That is what the game is designed around. That is a feature, right? Not a bug. Just a fun hypothetical question for you. I can only play in and GM one game system for the next 5 years. What are you picking? I can only play one. That's tough. There's like 3 answers, but I'm trying to figure out which one I would actually want to play. Like I only can play this one. I can only play one. I am going to say 3rd edition Dungeons and Dragons. I just feel like it's a system I'm intimately familiar with. I played it for so long, I never got bored with it, and it does a lot of the things that I want a gaming system to do. So that is my answer. I mean, you said PBTA, which I didn't really consider a valid answer, because PBTA is like more of a philosophy. There are like literally, hundreds, if not, there's dozens, if not hundreds of games of PBTA. So that was like a little bit too over broad. So I wasn't going to pick just one thing, but I mean, if PBTA is an option, I guess I'll pick that one, just because that means I can play literally hundreds of different games, from Avatar to Dungeon World to Monster Hearts. But I assume you mean just one there. So, I mean, multi-session, really tough dungeons are so fun to play. I mean, again, remember, for me, and I know this blows people's minds, like this is, I never ran this dungeon. Let me go find it really quick. But I wanted to. I never ran this dungeon, but like, this is kind of the example of like, when I talk about a dungeon, okay, like this is level 4 of one dungeon. And by the way, a square is 10 feet. That is the kind of scale that we're talking about here, just an absolutely massive, massive dungeon. Again, you'll never be able to explore all of this. And this is just one level of this dungeon. And of course you're like, oh, it would take you forever to explore all this. Yes, it would. And you probably wouldn't, that's the way that this is designed to work. And within this space, it's not just the people wandering around killing things at will. There are things to do, places to see. Like, I mean, I have no idea what this. In old school maps, this usually means it's a big statue. So maybe the party knows that there is a massive chamber on this level where there is a massive statue, and that if they can, if they can bring their weapons to there in time, their weapons will become blessed with holy energy, which will allow them to defeat the demon on a different level. And so when they come to this level, yeah, they can poke around. Yeah, they can explore. But fundamentally, they're trying to figure out, how do we get to this central location? Maybe they're using divination magics. Maybe they're scouting. Maybe they're bribing some of the other creatures that live here, right? It's a much more engaged style of play than I think a lot of people give it, credit for as well. So, Alvaro, I have no idea what that number is. Whatever it is, it's much larger now than it ever has been. Let's see. Self-confessed cynic to my 3E says yes. For the best girl, 3.5. Yeah, I mean, that's, like 3.5 is like, it's like the high school sweetheart, and you guys went to different colleges and you wanted to experiment and try new things. It's like a Hallmark movie, right? And you've gone to New York and you've gone to LA and you've dated and supermodels and all of like the really fancy, fancy women out there. And then you go back to your hometown and there she is. And she's not a model, but she's beautiful and she's wearing a turtleneck and it's Christmas time. And you're just like, oh, all those old feelings come rushing back to you. And you go, oh, it's like a Hallmark movie. 3E is like my Hallmark movie. Let's see. Self-confessed cynic says, man, this is so cool. Makes me want to run another dungeon. RPG Musings, correctly identifying. Very good, RPG Musings. Which dungeon this is from? Yes, this is from Arden Vol. Can you share that whole dungeon on the Discord? Sure, Beowulf. Happy to do it. Again, I cannot stress this enough. That is literally one level, right, of the dungeon. There are like this, that's level 4. Over here, we have, level 6, right? Level 8, another massive sprawling level. So very, 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 cool. Very, very cool stuff, in my opinion. And yeah, I mean, and the other thing too, by the way, is like, this is where like if you're leveling up every session or every other session, like it's just not going to work. You know, some of these games, like, and some of because when the point of the game isn't to level, right? The point of the game is to explore the levels that you're on and to discover stuff and to find stuff out and figure stuff out. Then leveling becomes almost secondary, right? Like your character might be like, oh, we're higher level. Oh, we're really high level. Oh, we're really high level. Yeah, but we're still on level 4. So we don't need to be level 8. We don't need to be level 10. If we're level 5 now, cool. That'll make level 4 a little easier for us, but we're still here. We're still exploring level 4. So the need for us to be higher level, we're so used to APs, where it's like, you have to be this level because whether you do it or not, the monsters in the next part of this adventure are going to be level 7 and you need to be level 7. And then after that, the monsters are going to be level 8 and then they're going to be level 9 and you need to be those levels. And if you're not, the game math is going to crush you into the ground. Al Rayan says, have you ever checked out or discussed Exalted? I don't know what edition this is. I read this a long time ago. I bought it used. Let's see what edition this is. But I have never done it on stream. No. White Wolf has never really been my exact jam. I don't know what edition this is. Let's see here. Yeah, I mean, custom dice are brutal to get people interested in your game. Yeah, I mean, they do have, there's web pages, there's apps. It is a lot easier than people give it credit for. But I agree with Sean here. Like, I don't want to use an app for rolling a dice. I want to roll the dice. Viking says, doesn't 3E like kind of suck though? No. 3E definitely does not suck, Viking. No, not even close. It has a lot. There's a lot of things that are not great about it, but it definitely doesn't suck. Let's see. Of course you would, buddy. What do you all like about 3E? Well, Viking, the thing that I like about 3rd edition is that in 3rd edition, you can you can use spells and abilities to gain a substantial advantage over your opponents. And as a result of that, make a meaningful difference in the combat. And also, I really appreciate that the game isn't tied to this strict linearization of the numbers like it is in Pathfinder 2 or 4th edition. I always use the example of like a Mind Flayer, which is like a level CR7 monster, but its AC is like 17 or something, or 18. Very low. But that's because it's a squigged monster. It doesn't have particularly high armor class. So like, I like that the numbers don't like have to follow this exacting progress. I actually enjoy that you can kind of just, make shit up as you go along. So I do like that about 3E a lot. What else do I like about 3E? For the most part, I really enjoy the classes and the class design. I like the multi-classing. It's basically the same as 5th editions. It's fun. It's interesting. And 3E was still a time where, you'd roll your ability scores randomly and you never knew what kind of character you were going to have. And I think that's really cool as well. And, especially if we go old school 3E and we stick away, we don't go to Pathfinder. There are things that I liked about the game. Like I liked that level drain was still part of the game. It wasn't as brutally punishing as it was in, 1st edition D&D, where If you got hit by a specter or a white, you immediately lost a level. But negative energy levels were really scary and were really a thing and potentially could make your character lose levels. And when you got raised dead, you lost a level. And when you made magical items, it cost you experience. I know that sounds horrible and punishing, but I actually really, really like that. I don't own everything. I promise you. There are more RPGs that I don't own than that I do. What relatively popular game systems do you absolutely hate and won't play? I have never been a big White Wolf fan, is the answer. I don't know that I absolutely hate them by any stretch of the imagination, but I have played over the years like Vampire, Hunter, Werewolf. I've never played Mage. Maybe one more. And I don't know. It's never done it for me. So I don't want to say I hate it, but it's not my favorite. Wait, so you take 3.5 over PF1, or are you including PF1 with 3.5? I would take 3.5. Well, I would probably take 3.0 over 3.5, and I would take both of those over PF1, is how I would say that. I preferred 3.0 to 3.5. E6 is we did an E6 campaign. It was Pathfinder 1, but we did an E6 Pathfinder 1 campaign. We loved it. It was a lot of fun. I agree. It's fantastic. PF1 had negative levels too, but they were less punishing, I want to say. I thought they were than they were in 3rd edition. And Unfortunate Pumpkin, that is exactly what my 3rd edition games are like. It's a dungeon game, just a little bit more badass PCs that have a little bit more mechanical crunch to them than, say, if you were using Old School Essentials or AD&D 1st edition. That is basically what my 3rd edition games are like as well. Yes, E6. No, E6. Interesting. What made you prefer 3.0 over 0.5? The answer is very pedantic and will only make sense to people here. And the answer is, there's a lot of reasons, but the main one is spell durations. In 3.0, it was very common for a lot of spells to have a duration of 1 hour per caster level. So this included things like the stat buff spells, right? So like Bull's Strength, Cat's Grace, all that jazz. Also they might have been this in 3.5, but I can't remember. They were a D4 plus 1 bonus. It was random. So when someone cast like a Bull's Strength on a character, the amount that they gained was a random. It wasn't just a flat, plus 4. And as a result of that, okay, I'm getting super, I know, but as a result of that, by the way, so like Bull's Strength was level 2, was a 2nd rank spell, and it was 1d4 plus 1 strength bonus. But you could empower, and empower was a meta magic feat that increased the spell level by 2, and that would add 50% to any random dice rolls. So now you had 1.5 times 1d4 plus 1 strength. And so as a result of this, you could, over the course of the game, have a scaling strength bonus spell. Now, of course, you could also get a magical item that would give you a +6 bonus to strength, and that's great, and that's constant, and it works all the time, and you don't have to use your higher level spell slots, but we like the flexibility. But more important than this, by the time you got even to 3.5, they changed this down to, actually, I think they changed it to 1 minute per level. It might have been 10 minutes per level. I'm not exactly sure, but either way, it was no longer a quote unquote all day buff. And, did they stack? No, magic items were an enhancement bonus to your stat, and a spell like Bull Strength was a enhancement bonus to your stat. So they did not stack. Ben does not like E6. Oh, Ben, I or are you just saying it's not bucket list worthy? Because yeah, I don't think E6 is like some amazing experience that you have to experience, otherwise you're missing out. But I think it's great. I think it's a really cool system. I think it's a really cool way of playing the game. Okay, got it. Anyways, yeah, it was all right. Yeah, I hate short durations on spells. One of my so when we even got to 5th edition, one of the reasons that we bounced off of 5th edition was concentration. And how many spells? It's like, oh, again, we liked in 3rd edition that, characters would have, 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 or 12 buffs on them. And those buffs could change depending on what you were going to fight this day. If you were going to go fight a bunch of, demons, you might have a fire resistance spell or a fire protection spell, or maybe you have a buff that gives you, cold duration. You know what I mean? So like, we really liked that prep phase. And to us, 3rd edition, capstone this. Now, from a complete munchkin-y car op point of view, the other thing, which I will bring out, and I would be lying if I said this wasn't part of what we did. Haste. So in 3.5, haste, okay, was a multi-target spell. It could affect everybody in your party, basically. It gave them plus 30 feet to movement, I think. It gave them a +1 bonus to AC, a +1 bonus to reflex saves, and basically, if they made a full attack, you got an extra attack. So that's like a full action, whatever. 3.0 haste gave you an extra standard action each turn. It was only one target. But if you cast haste on a spellcaster, they had 2 standard actions. They could cast 2 spells around. And if you cast haste onto a melee character, they could do something like charge and then make a full attack. Or they could do something like cast a spell and full attack. They could, so it allowed characters, in our opinion, to just do a lot more cool things. In fact, one of the things I was like really excited about for Pathfinder 2 when I picked it up and I had heard a little bit about the 3 actions. I was like, oh yeah, like you'll be able to kind of do what you used to be able to do in 3rd edition, because now you have 3 actions. You'll be able to like attack and cast a spell and cast a spell. And then I got to the game and I was like, oh, and move. And I was like, oh, no, you really can't. You really can't, because the spells are almost all 2 actions. So there's no really, and then haste gives you an extra action, but you can only use it for strike and stride. So it was kind of like womp, 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 womp. I love systems that let the hair down when it comes to players' tools. I mean, yeah, the fact of the matter is like, it was awesome. I mean, it was really like when you got hasted, like you ever play when you know that feeling when you play Final Fantasy and it was like, I think it started with like Final Fantasy 4 when you cast fast or quick on a character and you saw that clock, it was that animation where the clock would go like, whoosh, shing, and your character would start glowing. And it was like, you'd watch the ATB gauge just go stink, stink, stink. Like you felt like you had just become super powered. Like I liked that. I liked that this magical buff fucking put you into overdrive. It was awesome. It was really cool. It was probably let me put it this way. I'm okay with it being really powerful. It was probably too ubiquitous. It was probably now granted, 3.0 haste was not 1 hour per level, right? It was like 1 round per level. So, you're talking about a spell that basically is only castable inside of a fight. But at the same time, there were times and places where, you'd get a couple characters hasted, and there was a mass haste at higher level. And it was freaking sweet. Because your characters were just really, really powerful and the spells were really, really good. And I was okay with that. I thought it was fun. All right. I've heard other gamers say that 3.0 haste was the prepped spell written in pen on a wizard's character sheet. Oh yeah. I mean, it like don't get me wrong, like fireball was great. And you would take it. And slow was really great too. So I mean, they were really good spells, but yeah, haste was really good. Short duration spells are fine. And again, Ouija board, let me be clear about something here. I don't want all spells to be 1 hour per level. I want there to be, like in Pathfinder 2nd edition, we have Longstrider, right? Which everybody takes the heightened version of so that it lasts all day, 8 hours. There are very few spells in Pathfinder 2 that have that kind of duration. I like for your character to have things that are longer in duration. And then I like to have maybe medium duration. And then I like to have very short duration. But if it has a very short duration, boy, oh boy, that power, that spell needs to be powerful. Also, additionally, if I'm going to cast a spell, I'm going back to 3rd edition here. If I'm going to cast a spell in 3rd edition, like Bull Strength, okay? And Bull Strength, let's say I roll, my character's going to get +4 to their strength attribute today, temporarily, of course. But that means that virtually my character's 16 strength is now a 20, which means that all of my attacks are 2 higher, right? All of my strength-based skills are 2 higher. My damage rolls are 2 higher, potentially 3 higher if I'm using a 2-handed weapon. That's a lot of calculations to do for one fight. If I am going to sort of create we used to create we had like 5x7 note cards that we would create like combat cheat sheets on that sort of like show what were our current combat stats that were different from our, actual character sheet. That is something that it's fine to do it once, but I don't want to have to be doing that and not doing that and not doing that. Like if I'm going to get that buff and I have to like recalculate numbers, I want that to be golden for a good long time. Whereas something like haste, which is super, super powerful, doesn't change any of your numbers in 3.0. And so that is why it feels better and more acceptable to be on a short duration buff. Does that make sense? Yeah, contingency was good. Permanency was good. Although both of those cost experience points. So they were kind of balanced in that respect. I mean, don't get me wrong, Viking. I love Powered by the Apocalypse games as well. But there is a certain appeal that comes from, playing a game where these effects and powers aren't just being made up, but are sort of real and are in the game itself. It just feels differently. Well, yeah, in 3rd edition, not only do cantrips suck, Klaus, but in 3rd edition, you don't have unlimited cantrips. Cantrips use you have 0th level spell slots, and you have to use them once per cantrip to cast spells. So in 3rd edition, you don't have unlimited cantrips either. Yeah, I mean, again, PBTA is really, really cool. It just doesn't have all of these, features that I expect games to have. So, all right. Well, this was fun. Appreciate everybody hanging out. I think I am going to go play some Magic the Gathering. Do a little Lost Caverns of Ixalan draft. Little money draft. So, yeah, I might be, who knows? I might be back Sunday. Again, I have a pretty open weekend. I don't really have anything going on. And maybe we'll be back Sunday. Maybe we can go a little earlier in the day. And we really actually do need to talk about Pendragon, since we kind of got sidetracked by doing the solo quest. But I do actually want to talk about the rules of that game. So maybe we'll do that this Sunday. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what the patrons are interested in. But yeah, I love talking games with you all. And of course, appreciate each and every one of you for hanging out and being a part of the Patreon and spending some time with me. And hopefully you enjoy this slightly earlier stream. Thanks to the holiday that my lovely employer gave us. Yeah, we are going to awesome. Sounds good, Chris. Thank you. Lydia, thank you so much for joining us. Ben, I will talk to you later, buddy. As for everybody else, thank you so much for joining. And yeah, no, these are fun. I really do. I want to find more ways to do earlier streams to get some of our people on different time zones and different time schedules on. So, normally I'm working, so it is kind of difficult, to get on. So, but thanks everybody, and we'll see you next time on Knights of Last Call. Peace.